the ultimate aim of the human existence. With these words of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, I welcome all the participants to the post-lunch session on the fifth day of two-week interdisciplinary refresher course, Cinema, Society and Education, being organized by ARST College and Ramanujan College. Friends, today's session is special as in we are going to discuss documentaries which are fascinating and inspiring at the same time. And for us, they have special importance because they are directly related to the central concerns of our refresher theme, which are cinema, society, and education. As documentary is a cinematic tradition that records social realities and inequities for the purpose of instruction and education, we will examine and learn about the scope of documentaries beyond filmmaking, which is the central theme of our resource person's presentation today. Simone Kilmary, the executive director of the International Documentary Association, said that documentaries are essential to a healthy and democratic society. And that's why they are feared by autocrats. And it's a form that allows us to walk in another's shoes to build a sense of shared humanity. And it also helps in letting the truth and sanity prevail in the society. These films inform and educate and are a platform to create a dialogue and to engage with the important issues of our times. Friends, with the screening of The Coral Woman on 10th of April, we began a conversation about the importance of oceans. And to guide us further down this road of inquiry and truth-seeking on many such important subjects, we have amidst us our resource person for the day, Ms. Priya Thuvasheri, who is a new age director, an extremely successful, bright, and focused filmmaker and television producer who has focused on women and gender. Her stories give us a peep into myriad experiences of the body, the environment, the community from gender and feminist perspective. She has been directing, producing, and editing documentary films and television programs for New Delhi Television, Fox Traveler, CNA, National Human Rights Commission of India, Films Division of India, Public Service Broadcasting Trust, and Khabar Leheria for over a decade now. She is currently an executive producer at Chambal Media. Her films include Khana Badosh, My Sacred Glass Bowl, Survey Number 0, Coral Woman, and Bawra Lake Your Water. Her films have been recognized with participation, mentions, and Best Film Awards in many international and national film festivals. She has been co-director of the IAWRT Asian Women's Film Festival, New Delhi from 2019 to 2020, and is currently a board member for IAWRT India Chapter 2020 to 2022. She is also recognized as a Canon Cinema EOS Platinum Associate. Currently, she is working on a series of climate change films. Priya has a master's in mass communication from the Anwar Jamal Kidwai Mass Communication Research Center at Jamia Millia Islamia University, New Delhi. Now it's my honor and privilege to invite her to share her views on the subject of documentaries. Over to you, Priya.
Thank you, Shubha. Thank you, organizers, for having me here. It's such a privilege and honor to share my work and experiences with such a wonderful audience here. When Shubha approached me telling we need to do a session, I first assumed it's for students because as filmmakers, we quite like it becomes a daily routine for us to meet, especially these days, online students. But when I came to know it's a bunch of teachers, and I was thinking, what can I bring to such an audience at this hour? It's very important for me because I come from as a filmmaker, I come from a background, a typical traditional middle-class family from Kerala who didn't have anything to do with filmmaking. And I'm very proud to say that it was my teachers who I met during my graduation and master who inspired me and molded me to who I am today. Let it be my graduation Kerala University professors who didn't mind even if I skip a class and go and attend the film screening, or let it be Shohini, Shabina, all these people from Jamia University who really opened up the possibilities of documentary filmmaking. Because as a student, I remember watching documentaries and I was like, this is so boring. And I was very much drawn towards fiction films. And to be honest, it was during my Jamia days I happened to see good documentaries and really understood the possibilities and the power of the medium. And it really changed my impression that documentaries are not that boring, and documentaries are actually powerful and entertaining at the same time. So by the end of my master's, I was very clear that, this is going to be my medium. And on the way, it was like learning, unlearning, learning from my peers, learning from, world cinema, everything happened. And in today's session, I thought of sharing something I learned on the way. It's not there in textbooks because it's something which is newly developing. We'll be specially focusing on impact documentary making. And because I think as teachers, this will be an interesting thing to share to your students, because they will also be thinking like how I did at one point, thinking documentaries are boring, or what are the possibilities? Okay, I became a documentary filmmaker. What next? What is my possibilities out there? So all this will come in our conversation today. And to make my point, I will take one of my latest documentary film, Coral Woman, as an example. Few of you might have got a chance to watch the film. Otherwise, after this session, I'll definitely share a link with all of you so that you guys can go back and really relook at the conversation we are going to have today. At any point today, if you feel there is some kind of clarification needed from my end, please put your comments on the chat box, or just unmute and please go ahead and ask, because this is like, I'm not a professor, I'm not a teacher, I'm a practitioner, I'm a filmmaker. So if there is any point which need a bit more clarification, please feel free to. So Coral Woman is my latest finished documentary film. It was completed in 2019. It's a story of a woman who fell in love with coral reefs, and in her 50s she decided to learn swimming and diving. And through her, we look at the coral reefs of India, what is happening to them, etc. If you look at, so I would, at this point, maybe I can share with you a trailer, so that's for the conversations we are having, there is some kind of reference. Okay, what am I speaking? Is my...
Screen is visible.
Yeah? You can see my PPT?
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, Priya. The thing is that 10th April, we had screened the movie for all our participants, so they are familiar with the context. I mean, just a piece of information I wanted to share.
Yeah. Everyone can see my screen, right?
Yes, it is there.
Yeah, we'll just share the trailer.
I used to tell you, நான் காணும் உலகங்கள் நீ காண வேண்டும். Actually, I want you to dive and see this beautiful underwater. There's a big corals full of fishes. They were all swimming around me, colorful fishes. I never had an idea as to I'd be diving in my lifetime. No, not even swimming. Somebody saw these paintings and told me, have you taken a closer look at the coral? So I thought it's high time. I dived and found these corals myself. It looks so blue and beautiful outside. Go underwater, it is like a desert.
2016, we lost about 16.2% of corals in Gulf of Mannar. I don't know how long it will take for Gulf of Mannar to recover back. If there is another bleaching, we will lose more.
வெளிநாடுகளில் இருந்துலாம் முத்து வாங்குறதுக்கு இங்கே வருவாங்க எங்கள் டாடி காலத்தில். ஆனால் 10 அடி 5 அடி 4 அடி உயரத்தில் அந்த பவளப்பாறை உண்டு. இப்போ அந்த சுற்றியல் இல்லை, அந்த பாறைகளும் இல்லை, எப்படியோ அழிஞ்சு போச்சு.
நீங்கள் ஊற்றிட்டு வந்த பழைய துணியை கடலில் குளிச்சுட்டு தீத்தாடிட்டு அதை இங்கே போட்டோம்னா அது வந்து உங்களுக்கு தோஷம் கழியும் அப்படிங்கிறது அந்த காலத்துல இருந்து ஒரு ஐதீகம்.
Pepsi possi is the Capopicus alvarezi. That is an exotic species. It was introduced in Gulf of Mannar as a part of livelihood program. This is the Capopicus covered coral colony. So within 30-40 days, the entire colony is now dead.
The police have had to open fire in Tuticorin in Tamil Nadu. This even as thousands of residents were protesting against the Sterlite copper plant.
ஊர்ல ஒரு ஆளுக்கு ரெண்டு ஆளுக்கு இருந்த மாதிரி தான் இருந்துச்சு. இப்போ அப்படி கிடையாது. ஒரு தெருவுல 4 பேர் 3 பேருக்கு இருக்கு.
Climate change, it's not what we can control locally. It needs global attention and global initiatives. Whatever the mistakes the whole world is doing, we are facing the consequences.
So the film started with a very simple idea of documenting the story of Uma Mani. She's a painter, diver who's living in Tamil Nadu coast, and her fascination for corals and her determination to learn swimming and diving at this age. So for me, when I thought of making this film, I thought I was plunging into a beautiful, happy story. Because it's such an amazing and inspiring story, which I was very much into. And my previous works were on gender. So I was very much fascinated by her story. And I didn't know anything about underwater. It was something I learned while making Coral Woman. But it was during the research time, I came to know about, this is Uma and the place where she is living. She actually lives in the hills. And she is a sea person. So I came to know about Gulf of Mannar. Gulf of Mannar is in the Tamil Nadu coast. Rameshwaram might be very famous and most of you might know. It's very close to that. It is on mainland India, it is one of those regions which has a rich coral reef and marine ecosystem. I didn't know about this until I decided to make this film and I started doing research. So this is Gulf of Mannar, and I came to know about very interesting facts about what is happening to corals there. This is a coast which was famous for pearls. In 15th and 16th century, Portuguese, Dutch used to come to this coast for pearls. And I think the blessing of that coast soon became a curse, because then it got developed into a very busy fishing port, industrial hub. There are if you go to the coast, you will see minimum 5 thermal plants, new thermal plants coming up, all kind of chemical companies, because it's well connected with sea, rail, etc. And you can see how much when people came here, they wanted to build buildings and go downs, and they started using corals as bricks because it was so abundant. They're like, we can just construct go downs and factories and buildings and churches using these corals. It was pure ignorance of people. And by the time we really realized what we are doing is actually a big mistake, 60% of the corals from this coast was taken away. And now you don't find any pearls in this coast. It's just like stories which old generations share that, my ancestors used to go underwater and collect pearls. And now the current generation is actually repeating it, but now instead of pearls, they are actually saying, we don't see corals. Like when I was a kid, there was like these kind of fish, that kind of fish, and they're all disappearing. So for me, this journey became not just about Uma, but actually what is happening to the corals. When I came to know that, it is actually like a thermometer of like what is happening to the world. It's actually telling that there is like the corals are bleaching. That means they're actually losing their color and they are dying. And that stage is bleaching, where they lose their color and they became white. And it's actually telling and crying to the human beings that, what you're doing is actually going to impact each one of us. And the temperature in the sea is increasing. So a lot of issues was revealed during the making of the film. So these are like the images of dead corals I witnessed. These are dead, like they first turn white and then they just die. So this is something which you might be very familiar. Many of our showcases might have such white corals. Before doing this film, even I thought corals were white, and I thought that it's a piece of stone, but they're actually animals. They're not even plants. They're actually animals which is having a symbiotic relationship with an algae, and it's a beautiful story in itself. So coming back to the focus of of why we are here and what we are talking today is actually impact. This came to me after making the film. I didn't make Coral Woman with an intention. I want to make an environment film. I want to create an impact or nothing. As I said, it was a pure journey of I fell in love with the story of Uma, and I wanted to document that story. And I thought that will be inspiring for many women around us. But when I discovered what is happening to the corals, I felt an emergency. I felt that I can't just move on to another film and just leave this film as it is. And that is how we started Coral Woman Impact Journey, because I happened to attend a forum called Good Pitch India. This is when we represented Good Pitch India last year, 2020, just before the lockdown. Good Pitch India gave a platform which is focusing on films which can create an impact. And usually they every 2 years they make a call and they select 5 to 6 films and guide us the impact plans, the possibilities of using your film to create an impact. So we reached Good Pitch India. It opened up a lot of ideas and possibilities of using a documentary film to create an impact. Going back to the point of impact, as a filmmaker, I never say that, just by making a film, we can change the world. If that was possible, we would be living in a very beautiful world by now, because that much number of films on very important topics have been already made, and they all have a lot of potential in itself. But then why this impact? If you see the documentary history itself, a lot of filmmakers got into documentary filmmaking, especially because understanding the potential of documentary films. It could be their politics. It could be the politics like Narmada Bachao or Kashmir or any environmental issue or gender issues. A lot of films which are made on child marriage or any such topics. Why are they made? Because it need not be made by people who are filmmakers. They are maybe like few activists who really wanted to expand or express what is happening through their film. I think that itself shows that definitely they do have a lot of potential, but it need to be strategized in a particular way to create that kind of impression. If you remember when the first film was made, a train to the station, like people really thought a train was coming towards them and just ran away, right? But in today's world with so much of medium, it really needs a little more strategizing for really creating an impact. So we'll talk more about that. So what is impact documentary? For me, the simplest definition would be, it is like marrying art and impact. I see my work more like an art. Because filmmaking has such a possibility that you bring all kind of art into one form. There is music, there is painting, there is sculpting, there is all kind of visual and video and audio art forms are brought together, and that really has an impact, has a power in itself. And that Marrying Impact is actually social impact documentary. Like I said, that it's a given fact that films have the capacity to influence people and lead them to new perspectives. And what is impact documentary? Unlike most news and social media, documentary storytelling can pull audience into an immersive experience, taking the time to build empathy or understanding more deeply. They tell stories about the lives of real people in ways that help audience make or see connections about ideas or issues that may otherwise seem abstract. The audience is often changed by the experience. That's why documentary, especially when used strategically, has the capacity to prompt people to engage and act. And I felt with Coral Woman, we had that kind of possibility with many documentaries which are made. They do have an impact potential if we really strategize it in such a way. So we can use documentary film as a tool for broad reaching and social change. So how do we do this? Like in Good Pitch India, what did we do, or what did we start doing? We actually made a partnership, because there are a lot of people out there. There are activists out there. There are divers, or like since we are talking in specifically with this as an example, I did feel that there are a lot of divers out there. There are people who really feel for the ocean. There are swimmers out there. There are coastal fishermen out there. So there are people in different pockets who really wanted to do something. And what the film is actually trying to do is joining those dots. So it's like a partnership with filmmakers, philanthropists, corporate, non-profit organization to use storytelling to maximize their social impact. So this is something which I had truly experienced over my filmmaking career. Like I said, that a film might not, like just watching one movie, getting out of the theater, and people won't just think that, oh, from tomorrow I'll do anything to stop pollution, or I won't use plastic. That's not happen. But if the film has the potential to create and catalyze some kind of discussion, and that discussion can really put people into action. The experience of watching a film together in a crowd, and then getting out and having a conversation is very important. So for example, with Coral Woman, if anybody asks me like, how can I watch the film? I say like, I can definitely send you the film wherever. I don't even want to know who you are. But if you promise me you will watch it with 10 people together in one space, that is very important for me, because you like it, you don't like the film, you might like some portion from the film, that's okay. But if you have that kind of conversation, a lot can come out of that conversation. So what we are actually doing, or what impact documentary films are doing, is they're actually taking the film to influential audience through design screenings and events to help to drive the film's message to target audience. So what we are actually doing is, for example, it was sometime we were having a screening in Mumbai International Film Festival, and this was before the Impact Journey. And we had an exclusive screening for 300 students, like a big audi full of students. And I sat among the audience, and the film was not made for keeping children as an audience. It was made for a generic audience. And I really doubted, will children really get the point what we are making? Because the film do have statistics. Film is talking about, global warming and climate change. For me, I thought these are like heavy terms and children won't get it. But I was so surprised, even the captions where they were repeating over it. And for my surprise, the post-screening, the interaction we had was very different. They were really, like, generally when we screen it for adult, they really sympathize or empathize for the course, but that's it. But for students, they were having solid questions. Can I do something at home to stop this? Can I reverse this? So that really triggered me, and I felt a lot of potential out there. And this is a sample of a postcard which we received from one of our young audience. So this became a strategy for us. We understood, this is where change can start. So we started having, like, along with screening it for specific audience who has the power to maybe influence policies, etc., we really started having specialized screenings for students. So we didn't let it be just screenings, let it be writing a postcard, or beyond that, we started doing activities around that. We were so blessed to have people who thought like or aligned with what our vision is, and emailed us and said that how can we connect, can I organize something. So it was just like joining one hand. So it slowly is actually becoming a movie into a movement. This is another sample of a postcard we received. uh, so I have like a bunch of 300 postcards already. So what else are we doing? We have the documentary. We are also making a children's book, which will be an illustrated book which talks about importance of corals. And it will be a children's book, so written in such a way. The draft of the book is ready. We are just waiting for a publisher to come on board to help us cross that part. We are designing a virtual toolkit, because for me, when I started the film, I thought corals means Maldives, Great Barrier Reef in Australia, or in India, it is maximum Lakshadweep or Andamans. And when I started thinking of doing the film, I was actually researching about that. But it was when I came to know about Gulf of Mannar, when I came to know about Gulf of Kutch, I'm like, we have rich marine ecosystem in our mainland India, and we are not aware. So we felt that a database and a platform for all this information should be collected, because education is the first step for change. We strongly believe that. So we are designing a virtual toolkit for that. We dream for an art residency where we can create art installations which are inspired and aligned with it, so that we can multiply the conversations and effect. And a part of the installation is we dream to do it underwater also. Uh, we are also starting a virtual ocean tour from this weekend. I'll tell you more about that. So it's like a series of impact campaigns we are doing. Like last week we did like when COVID hit, like we attended Good Pitch India, and a lot of people came on board telling we want to partner, we want to partner. And then for our surprise, without like everybody's surprise, I think globally, the pandemic happened, and we were all like, all our plans were derailed. It took a little time for us to come back to track. I think it's like our life, our professions, everything got derailed by the pandemic. But slowly it's just like coming back. And last week we did a online painting session. So when one of our partners said that we want to organize a painting workshop for students on coral reefs, I was wondering how will you do it? And for my surprise, it was really And this was the result. They were like, it was a limited audience session. So they started painting their corals, how they dream about it, etc. And it was so interesting. There was this one little boy who said, I don't want to paint my corals. I want to leave them as white. And he said, a lot of corals are bleaching. So I want it to be like that. So they even imagined how, like, we had like reading sessions. We read a piece of the book for them, and they were imagining how like the Uma, the character, would be plunging into the water. So through storytelling, through paintings, we are actually encouraging children to protect coral reefs. So this was the session, and now we are getting multiple demands from schools and parents asking when will be the next session. This is the other event which I said we are starting this week. It's a series of webinars which we are planning. We wanted to do it physically, traveling across the coast, but the pandemic really derailed our plan. But now we are taking it virtually. What we are thinking is in 11 months, cover 11 coasts, and 11 issues will be covered during these sessions. We are starting with Tamil Nadu coast, because that is where the film is located. And our topic for this session will be the lessons from pandemic. So what happened to oceans during the lockdown and post-lockdown during the pandemic. So the experts will be coming and sharing information regarding this. I welcome all of you to be a part of this. If any of these projects, if it really fascinates, do share it with your students, because they might be interested to know more about it. So yeah. We are also having this interactive toolkit, which I mentioned. It will have quizzes, that maximum, like how can we have like fun along with education. So there will be podcast, quiz, flashcards, all kind of games. This is in making right now. We are looking for more partners to support us for this. This is one of my dream project, which is an art residency where 5 young artists will come together, and we will have an underwater installation. Because after making Coral Woman, I came to know about coral rehabilitation, which is like artificially it's like a nursery underwater. Some of the researchers in India are actually doing it. Corals have this beauty of the way they reproduce is sexually and asexually. Sexually happens only if there is right conditions, and so they have eggs and sperms in a particular conditions, and that's how they generally reproduce naturally. But they can also reproduce asexually. When a piece of coral is broken, if it is grown in a particular atmosphere which is favorable to it, it can actually grow. So we are planning to do that with the installation we are doing underwater. If you need to know anything more, please reach out to me post this session. Also, I can speak on and on and on about all this. I want to show one more clip from the film, which really summarize what we intend to do. Let's see a clip. Can you see my screen? Yeah. Hello.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay.
It is there.
Okay. This is the last scene of the film.
I used to tell you, நான் காணும் உலகங்கள் நீ காண வேண்டும். I want you to dive and see this beautiful underwater. It was a beautiful experience, Priya. You should also experience it.
That was Coral Woman's last sequence. Before I made this film, I didn't know to swim. I learned swimming when I decided to make this film. Before making this film, I didn't know about impact, or I didn't know anything about social impact. It was a learning which happened along with the film. And it's the time we are living in. We are still not out of the pandemic. We thought we are almost with the vaccines coming, but I think the nature really wants us to tell or remind, it's high time. It's high time for us to do something. And if we really start now, there is a chance for a reversal. For me, this film was a lot of learning. And today's session, I thought that let it be a session where I can share this new experience or new knowledge I gained while making this film. I can now open it for some interaction if you are interested to know the making of the film or more about impact, anything I know, I would be happy to share.
Thank you so much. First of all, Priya, thank you so much for an absolutely engaging and enriching session. And also for taking us through the journey of, your journey and Uma's journey. And I mean, as you were showing the last scene, I mean, that is the highest point. That's the high point in the movie, where, you break the illusion that you are not watching a movie. This is something real, and you have to be collaborative. You have to participate, and you can just not, sit on the other side, on the couch and, watch it as something, fanciful or fictional. It's something real. So that is something I loved it. I mean, the way she invites you, she exhorts you to join her in her movement. So that makes a lot of impact. And thank you very much for making us privy to this whole, journey of starting a movement through art. I mean, we were, personally speaking, I was not much aware of this whole idea of impact creation. The way movie makers are, strategizing and taking their art to another level to negotiate with, with issues and also to create awareness and to bring change in the society. So it's absolutely wonderful. And it makes a lot of sense that you are not just, content with making a piece of art and leaving it there. You are taking it to another level, and you are inviting people to become a part of this art movement that you have started. So my applause to you. I am sure our participants must have seen the difference, between your art and the art of other movie makers. But yes, there is an idea, there is a thought behind every act, every creation that we undertake. So it's very important to to read or to know about the thought process or the idea that goes behind, that goes into the making of a piece of art. So thank you very much for telling us all these things, these technical know-how, and also how how these days art can be, the impact of the art can be enhanced and it can be meaningfully utilized. So it was a great pleasure knowing about all of these.
I will just add one point. Impact is quite new to Indian platform in this way. Like I said, that we do have filmmakers who are activists who intends to make their film for this impact driven. But in this strategized way, it's something very new. But it's quite popular internationally, and it's been very successful with many films. It's not just about environment films. There are I came to know about Chinese film, which was about old age, and they also had a movement where they started having screenings for children in PVRs, and then they went back to their parents and said that, you can't leave your parents in old age homes, and that they started making hoardings and boardings, and it became a huge movement. And it's this process is such like for students also to know the possibilities. There is something called impact producer. Like a film producer, this impact crew list is sometimes bigger than the film crew. So the money involved or the potential is bigger than the film itself. So that kind of achievements have happened with films internationally. In India, it's new and few filmmakers are doing it. So it's slowly getting popular, but I'm sure most of your students will be really interested, and they do have a scope in future in this field.
Knowing your commitment to the cause, all of us pledge our participation and our contribution to this movement that you have started. And let me see a few questions, because our participants were quite excited about the movie, and they really appreciated the movie, the content and the cause, and they wanted to interact with you. So let me take up a few questions if we can. Neha Pandey would like to ask, do you consider yourself an activist now? If yes, please share your journey from being a filmmaker to an activist. Also, please elaborate on how documentary films can be promoted more. Film festivals and special screenings are two options. OTT platforms have allowed documentary filmmakers to showcase their work, but do you think making a film available on such platforms is enough?
I don't see myself as an activist. No, I'm still thinking twice when I'm calling myself a filmmaker, because I do see a long way to go there itself. But I think there is politics everywhere, right? I think every filmmaker will have his or her own politics, which will really automatically or consciously or unconsciously come into their work, right from what you decide to show in your frame, or to the decision to what to keep in the film and what not to. I didn't, for example, in the film, even for Uma, I didn't make her into a superhero. If you watch the film, you will never ever feel that, oh wow, she is an activist, or she is a very simple person. You might feel like a lady right next outdoor, a neighbor you had met, or a lady you had met in your market. I think that's what we tried to do through the film. You don't need to be an activist to create a change or be part of this movement. A simple individual sitting in the hills can do something at her house. If you ask Uma what she is doing, she had converted her roofing into solar panels. She started conserving water. She talks to tea plantation workers in her Kodaikanal and tell them, the pesticides you spray on tea is actually reaching the sea, which few of them might not even have seen sea. So sitting in Delhi, the plastic I throw every day, the amount of plastic I increase every day is actually reaching the sea. So I don't see myself as an activist, but I became more conscious after doing this film, definitely. I remember when in my film, I have this politics of having maximum women crew. So it started as a very normal process, okay, some certain films I was doing really wanted more women in the team, but slowly understanding what is happening in the film industry, it became a very conscious decision for me to have more women in my crew. If I have a power to pick someone, some technician, I decided that, I will give a chance to a women technician, because there is a lot of women out there who deserves a lot of recognition. So for Coral Woman, I was looking for a female cinematographer underwater, and all the names which came up was men. But I did a post. I remember I put up a post on Facebook with a very beautiful black and white photo of a woman holding a camera underwater. And I said, I am looking for a female cinematographer. And for my surprise, I got an inbox full of women asking, they want to partner for this film. Some of them were already divers. Some of them were cinematographers who didn't know to swim. They're like, let me give it a shot. And I had 2 women cinematographers for the project. So yeah, I can't call myself an activist, but I do have politics, and
but it's so evident. It's so evident. I mean, how can it is so unmistakable? I mean, one has to accept it that you are, earnestly and with a lot of sincerity, choosing your people and choosing stories and talking about issues which matter to a large number of people. And in fact, while I was doing a research on your work and your, your various engagements, I came to know that you have made a movie called Number Zero, which talks about the struggles of women salt farmers. So consciously, unconsciously, I see women protagonists all over. Okay, all the works that you have done, you have got females in lead positions, and then it is quite evident that you have more than 80% of your staff is women. So I mean, and you still deny that you have anything to do with activism. So this is appreciable. I mean, without taking any advantage, you are practicing, what you seriously believe in, and we all seem to have been touched by that. And let me take up more questions on this point. Dr. Joseph Adija Bola writes, it's a great session. I feel in documentaries, short films, communicating through words is not much visible. In this documentary, what Uma says, Nanna Kannadu Ni Kana Vendam, what I have experienced, you should also know, makes the viewer to be connected at emotional level. Would you talk of language in documentaries and short films?
I'll start with especially that reference you made. That was a very touching moment for me. It came out very organically when Uma, like we finished our interview, and after the interview also I let my crew also ask questions and interact, and the camera was rolling, and she said, so my camera person asked Uma, do you really feel that, because she's living in a very conservative atmosphere where, husband, son, that's her world. And she even decided to learn swimming once her son finished his course, and she had a lot of time, and she's like, now I need to do something for myself. So my camera woman asked, like, when you are underwater, do you really feel that this is my world, no husband, no son, like I am this independent woman, do you feel that? She said, no, I really want everyone to experience this, even my husband, even Priya, because I had never been underwater. Like even the last sequence you saw in the film, that was yet to be shot. And she said, I want Priya also to experience it. I always tell my husband, and I am telling you, Priya, this, Naan Partha Karchagalellam Nee Naangavanam. It's a very famous Jamini Ganesh dialogue from Tamil Nadu. And I said, what did you just say? Can you repeat that? Because I at that moment, I didn't know that this is going to be in the film. Because for me, that was a treatment of the film. That was the language of the film. Because exploring or looking at coral reefs through Uma, it's her journey. And through her journey, like the audience is also slowly learning one by bit, along with learning about her journey. So I felt that is exactly like that. That was my journey. I would like, if I tell you how I came to know about Uma, it was a very random phone call which came to my office while I was working with NDTV. She called up NDTV reception, and I was in charge of the documentary department. So they connected the call to my desk. And luckily I was there on that desk that moment attending her call. And she said, can your channel make a film on coral reefs? And as a news channel, this was quite common. People call up and say that, okay, there is an issue. Why don't you cover a topic? Why don't you cover this? So I said, we can't make films for you, but if you have a film, maybe I can broadcast it in our channel. And somewhere it just got connected. She coming from Tamil Nadu, me from Kerala. And we started talking, and she said, "Can I have your number?" And I just it was a gut feeling, and I gave my phone number. The same day she called me back and she said, "I read about you, I saw your documentaries, why don't you make a film on coral reefs?" And me sitting in Delhi, who didn't know even to swim, I'm like, "Coral reefs, I don't know, but who are you? Like, what is your story?" And when I heard about her journey of learning diving at this age, etc., it was quite inspiring. So at that moment itself, I told her, like, I don't know about the rest, but I'm gonna, like, I want to make a film on you. And that friendship continued for 2 years. And when I decided finally to leave the channel, I decided to plunge into this water. So the language of this film is actually this journey exploring through her. And we generally do recce, which is like to understand our character more, to understand the location more. We generally do something called recce, which is actually revisiting the location and being with the character. So I did that with Uma. I stayed with her for 2 days. I told her, let's go to a sea for 2 days and see what we get. And I just had my camera along with me, and we had a lovely time. And we went into the sea, and she's like, "I want to jump into the sea." We went to the sea. I was sitting in the boat, completely frightened. And she jumped into the sea and was having her fun. And she was like, "Priya, jump, it's not deep. You can also come." And there were people around, and I just did it for her. And at that moment, there was this moment where she was holding me while I was struggling, and somebody clicked a photo of both of us underwater. And the image was like her holding my hands underwater. And it was that moment when I felt that the film is going to end like that. So some of the parts in the film were constructed because I'm not a filmmaker who shoots for a very long time, many years, nothing like that. Coral Woman was shot over 6 days in the coast, 9 days. And 1 month I stayed with Uma and documented her alone in her house. So that was it. So it was important to have certain sequences in the film, which was, I was very clear, like the opening I was very clear, the end I was very clear. But few sequences were very organic also. So sometimes you mold yourself when you are at the shoot. Like, for example, there was this moment when I decided, okay, I want to shoot, like there was this canal full of waste, which was directly joining the sea. So my plan was to follow Uma through the canal and reach the sea. And the crew was following her. Suddenly, this few women came forward and asked Uma, "What are you guys doing?" And she said, "We are making a film on coral reefs, and we saw a lot of dead corals yesterday." And they said that this is what is happening to the corals. The chemicals are dumped into the sea, and they started speaking about sterilite plant. So that was not planned in the film. It just happened organically, and we decided to go with it because it was a huge issue. And soon, like, it was like we were at that coast when the fishermen were protesting for almost like 100 days. And on the 100th day, they marched, and they were like a shootout, and 15-16 people were shot dead. So we witnessed it. I didn't plan that in the film, but after witnessing this and making that decision on time that, okay, this is going to be a part of the film, and how can I bring it in? So again, that brings the politics also. What to keep in the film. I could have easily ignored sterilite from the film because that was not the film about. But somewhere in the film, there is this sequence of we see the dead corals underwater, and it was by chance very turbulent day, and it was water was very murky. The camera was not steady because of that. And when I got the footage, my camera woman is like, "You can't use it. It's very unclear. It's murky. The camera was not steady." But when I was sitting in the edit, I remembered like the WhatsApp videos which these locals were sending me, which was like the shootout and the voice and the news clippings we were watching. So I just layered the audio with people on the land, which is again the impact of pollution. And I thought that maybe this is like the voice of the corals, So visuals became the dead corals underwater, and the audio became like what is seen on the land. For me as a filmmaker, I was thinking, if they had a voice or they had a chance to speak, how will they be reacting? That was the kind of mood I wanted to create. But while doing such things deliberately, I don't intend audience to respond the same way, because I do believe each viewer watch a film with their experiences. Sometimes these experiences and readings are beyond what the filmmaker herself had intended to do. So I honestly believe my audience are very smart. I don't have to spoon feed them everything. Sometimes they think and grasp things which I had missed.
Thank you so much for explaining all of this to us, because it's something very new to us. I mean, most of us don't have a background of, knowing how films are made or how the shoots are done, all of that. But yeah, one thing that I could get was that it is very important to connect with the subject, to feel about the subject. I mean, the way you were connecting with the subject and also with Uma's story, and you both had this pact to bring it out and to bring it before the world, and that had an added agenda that you wanted to create an awareness about this environmental issue before the world. So all of that was wonderful. One of our participants, she has experienced the same emotional journey. I mean, she has been through the same emotional experience, and she writes, this is Tara N, and she writes, from the storyline to picturization to sounds to the entire execution, one word, beautiful. Made me tear up, especially that end scene where Uma ma'am asks you to take this extraordinary journey into the ocean wild of corals, courage and hope. May these oceans surpass us humans from time to time. It's just a compliment, I think. You don't have to, I mean, if you want to say something, you can say, but yes, she's definitely very appreciative, and also, had the similar kind of empathic response that you had with Uma's journey. Another question that I would like to take up, Dr. Vinay Vikash would like to ask the kind of problems you had faced photographing such kind of film, and also what would you suggest to be your favorite DSLR camera? This is like some technical stuff he wants to know. The favorite.
With each project, the kind of camera you use is different. Like there are a few factors which factor in. For example, for Coral Woman, I went with a Canon XC15, which is a camcorder, which means the lens is attached to the camera, and it's very compact. It is a very small camera, but have like the very big positive thing with that camera was it had an audio in, so you can actually connect two audio microphones into the camera, so you get two sync sounds, separate tracks. So that was quite beneficial, and it's very compact. Because for me, I'm a filmmaker. I'm multitasking when I'm doing camera direction and cinematography. And with documentary filming, I don't want to bring in a huge camera which will just make my characters uncomfortable. So I wanted something which is very, like, it feels like an extension of my body. So this was very perfect for me, and it has good stability, which I really enjoyed. And it also had a 4K slot, which in case if I really want to switch into 4K, it was very quick. There is no tension of changing the lenses, because the lens is quite, range was very good. So that made me, like, for Coral Woman, to go with Canon XC15. My camera woman had a Mark II. The colors and everything really matched in the post, so it was not difficult. But after that, currently I'm working on another film which had like a lot of night shoot, and then I went with a cinematic camera called C300, Canon C300. That is because I wanted to shoot in low light, but it was an expensive camera. So if budget permits, that kind of camera really enables. So yeah, I do work with some Alpha, Sony Alpha, etc. Again, it all depends. But my basic rule is, it's not about the kind of camera you use. It's especially as a documentary filmmaker, it's the empathy you bring in it's the kind of respect you bring in for your character. So that is very important. There are places when you are tempted to roll, but there is like for me, it's very important to respect my character and because I will move on with my life and to other projects, but I'm dealing with real people, real life. They have a social life, they have their family, relatives. So like I make very conscious decisions on what to keep. Their consent is very important for me. And I really want people to look up at my characters. Let it be like a farmer from Bundelkhand, or let it be like the director of National Human Rights Commission, like a retired Supreme Court judge. I really want both of them to be looked up with respect when they are in front of my camera. Yeah.
I'll take a few more questions. My colleague Shivani Kupan says environmental concerns sadly remain the concern of a few in our country. Can films play an active part in making it a more global concern, and one that is taken with the seriousness it deserves? So what is the, we don't have many facts on this, but yes, one doesn't get to see too many movies on environmental issues. So what is your take on this?
We are going through a very tough time where environment is given the least importance. Let it be government, corporates, when it comes to a choice of in terms of development, there is no consideration of a sustainable development. Like when we decide to build dams, or when we decide to build industries, roads, losing a forest is never considered important. For us, electricity is important. Definitely, it's important for me as well as you. But can we go for sustainable energy? That is something which, and these are like, there are possibilities, instead of encouraging more thermal plants, why can't we invest ourselves for more solar plants? Like I had seen myself, I didn't know about what the impact thermal plants were having. But when I was in this coast, I remember I was coming back from the sea, and there was this was deep into the sea, and there was this concentric circles happening in the sea, as if something is happening underwater. And I asked my other members in the boat, asked like, what is happening there? Like, is it like, I thought like it's some natural phenomena happening in the sea. But I came to know that it was actually the hot water from the thermal plants which were getting dumped into the sea underwater, because it's so much of heat produced in the thermal plants. So they are like to cool out their coolants, they are using the water from the sea, and it's dumping back into the sea. And I was assuming we are talking about the ocean getting heated up, and this is happening 24/7 in deep sea. And sitting in our flats, we are not aware this is happening, and we are saying, okay, the corals are bleaching, we are losing all of them. Okay, if some corals die, like what is it to do with me? That's where we have to break. It's not about some corals dying. Like they are living organisms, they have every right like you and me to live in this world. But beyond that, it's actually telling us that we are going through a very wrong way. We are actually digging our own, what do you say, our own pit.
Yeah, it's a grave concern. I mean, all of us like to visit beaches and oceans and water bodies, but we are never, mindful of our activities around the sea beaches. We pollute them, and then it's a common scenario that all the dirty water of the restaurants or the shacks that are situated on the shores, that goes into that gets mixed into the seawater. So all of us witness all of these things, but we care very less about it. So it's time that we rise to these issues, and we also play our part, something that we can do. There are a few more questions. I will just quickly go through them. Yeah, Dr. Shazia Siddiqui would like to know about the projects that you have done on women salt farmers. Can you just give us a brief of that, because that also sounds very interesting and intriguing.
The film's name is Survey Number Zero. You can actually watch the film on YouTube, Survey Number Zero. It is about 3 women salt farmers from Little Run of Kutch in Gujarat. I was working with NDTV at that point of time, and I happened to know about the price of salt as 24 paise per kg, which was what the farmers were getting when they toil around for 8 months in the like really hot desert. So I came to know about it, and this film was produced by Films Division. And when I got funded, when I reached Kutch, it was again during the recce time. I was really trying to find one family. It was not intended to be these 3 women. Yeah, I was looking for a family who I can document over 8 months of salt farming. That is a time that will take. And the rest of the 4 months, they are generally in their village. So I visited their village after the village. I was visiting them. And I met so many people. And like any North Indian villages, it was like, when you go to village, men will be sitting and they will be addressing you, talking to you. And then after the conversation, they will say like, go inside and have tea. And that is where I actually get a chance to talk to women. And then they remove their gungat and they want to take a photograph. They want to see how I took a photograph of them. And I really loved those moments with them. And I still remember, like, towards the end of a day of meeting many farmers, I met this woman who should be in her 80s or early 90s. Her skin was like the texture of the desert, full of wrinkles. And she said like she's going to the desert next week with her son, because farming is like any farming. It's always a men-women combination. Just a man can't do the toil, just a woman can't do it. It's always both of them together. And she said he is unmarried, so he needs support, so I'm going. So I was like really taken back. This woman still with the same spirit, and it's going to be really tough in the desert. Kilometers inside, no water. There is not even one tree to take rest under. So in such a climatic conditions, she is ready to go. And I remembered in the beginning of the day, I met one family who had a newborn child, and they said next week they are also heading to the desert. And I was like, this 10-day-old child is going to this desert. So for me, this really made into the treatment of the film of 3 women and 3 stages of salt. Since I was working with a channel full time, I wanted a treatment which works for both. So I decided to go with that. So it really talks about issues women face in the desert. Then it talks about land, because that was something which I came to know while I was there. It is an unsurveyed land, and somebody fired a PAL, and it got this survey number 0, because it's an unsurveyed land on India. So I named the film Survey Number 0, because in the film you will also see the land rights which the farmers are fighting, because it is like Gujarat. We are very famous of Kuch Din Gujaro Gujarat mein. It's a hub of tourism, and this particular land had a wild ass, which is very famous for safari, like etc. And the government was telling that these agarias, who are the salt farmers, are threatening the endangered species. But you will really see that they coexisted. Salt farming is not new. It is not researched properly, but the songs and folk songs really speaks about them being there for years, and they had coexisted with the wild ass. But it is us who in safaris who run behind this wild ass, and which really increases its heart rate and lead to its collapse. So the farmers are actually fighting for their land rights, that they should be let to do the salt cultivation. Because you will also see in the film that with the family, children also migrate into the desert, and there are no schools, proper schools. There are, like, you will see in the film, there is one tent where one teacher teaches from 1st standard to 10th standard, and the teacher might not come every day because it's very interior. and most of them are dropout, and they don't see a world outside salt farming. And it was very automatic to see that, you know, every salt farmer's children turns out to be another salt farmer. And the year I was shooting, the salt prices dropped from 24 paise per kg to 21 paise. So for me, like, you know, I don't remember seeing 1 paise. And to even now people are getting paid in that rate really moved me. So that is, like, in short, the film. It's available on YouTube. Anybody can go and
Heart-touching story. Thank you for letting us know about this matter as well. You have covered such ground, Priya, and still our participants are curious to know more about your future projects, your current engagements, and also, I mean, this is personal, you know, curiosity. I just would like to know how much time does it require for you to finish one project? I mean, such hard work goes into the making. In the way you have been explaining it, it seems that you have owned the subject. You've done a PhD. You know, for us, that is something that that entails a lot of hard work and research and diligence. But for you also, it must have required a lot of effort. So, how much time did it take actually to complete any project?
It varies from filmmaker to filmmaker. I do know a lot of filmmakers who spend years into one project, and I really respect them because it needs a lot of patience, because documentary filmmaking is mostly a solo journey. You know, you have small teams who comes for the shoot and leaves. Many filmmakers do even shooting and audio, everything by themselves. But I think me coming from a television background, I don't invest a lot of I do prepare quite well. My pre-production is quite strong, and I do spend a good amount of time on post. But my production time is really tight. I really plan my days. Scheduling is quite tight. And I'm very clear what I need from each day, from each character, each situations. But at the same time, I'm open for documentary moments which open up during the course of the production. So it's generally not like very long time. Like Coral Woman specifically, it's a 52-minute film. We started, like I started my pre-production in January. I shot my film, as I said, 9 days and 1 month with Uma. Then I invested 1 month to make my first cut. That was a 2-hour cut. Then I took it to my co-editor, Reena Mohan. She's a very senior editor from the field. And with her, it was on and off. It was not like sitting, and it was good for the film also, because I was able to detach myself. By December, we had our almost like final cut, and mastering happened. And my sound designer is sitting in US. So we worked across the ocean for our post-production sound, thanks to the technology. So that is there, yeah.
There's another participant, Amit Kumar, who writes, art on paper moves to cinematic art, which takes us closer to reality. Of course, the environmental issues shown in the documentary, as you just pointed out, that a woman contacted you and implored you to shoot a movie on coral life underwater. In your opinion, should there be a platform or medium by which such concerned people can reach out to filmmakers for making films, documentaries out of the inability that they neither have the money and technical expertise to publicize such important issues? Yeah, this is really interesting that Uma, you know, from not having a very influential background or resources, you know, she one fine morning, she calls you up, she tells you about her interest, and then you sort of gets intrigued by that and you respond to it, and later on you both decide to team up and, you know, make this wonderful movie. So how many people are successful in this kind of you know, having this kind of partnership or you know, collaborative ventures? So
it's very important, and there is a lot of possibilities. Like it might change from what that person might have aimed. Like, for example, Uma wanted to make a beautiful films underwater. She wanted it to be called Coral Reef Gardens. So she never imagined we'll be talking about dying corals or, industrial pollution or anything like that. The film is very different from what she had actually imagined. But I do have a lot of experience tying up with researchers. Like, for example, I tied up with a researcher based in Canada. She was doing a research on a tribal community from Kerala. So it is good for us also as filmmakers. It's not just good for them. For example, this was about Kattu Nayakar community from Wayanad. And it's very tough in today's times to get permissions to shoot such community. They live in forest areas where you don't have access. And for me, that was a lovely collaboration to explore something like that. Right now, I'm associated with Chambal Media, home of Khabar Lahariya, if you know. So we are also partnering with another research institute to make a film on migration. So those researchers are working on migration, and since we are closely working on issues of migration, they approached us to make a film on migration. So that kind of partnership do happen, like between individuals, researchers. Like, for example, like one research institute working in Tamil Nadu coast approached me to document the coral rehabilitation work which they are doing. So it opened up, new ideas for me. Like when I designed this residency, I got this idea of doing coral rehabilitation on the art from actually these researchers. They were doing it on concrete blocks. So I thought, like, why can't it be on an art installation? It is. So the research and art is actually joining hands. So that kind of partnership is really possible. And I'm sure that many filmmakers like me are open to ideas with people, because we do believe in the possibilities and like that kind of, like if a researcher or a person expert comes on board, they actually did like 20% of the work. So to start from there will be nice.
Yeah, that will be great. Actually, many people, very interested and conscientious citizens would like to, come up and offer their support. Let me see. Krishna Murthy is writing that man is always fighting a losing battle. It's always a bad bargain. Unless we take the environment as a living room, individually, we would not be able to give anything worthwhile to generations to come. This is just an observation. If you want to answer to it.
It's very tough for me also. Driving this impact along with the job is really time consuming. And yesterday itself I was talking to an ex-colleague, and I was telling, she was appreciating like what we are doing, and I was telling her it's really tough at times. I really lose hope. And like, we are like, for example, we opened up this webinar. How many people even registered in this webinar, which is going to happen over this weekend? So sometimes, like, we are really there is no money involved. Like, we are not gaining any money out of this impact activities. There are people who are doing it professionally to make like that way. But I have a full-time job and I'm doing this just for the cause. And I'm just lucky to have few partners on board. So she said, like this lovely thing that, a movement don't happen overnight. It will take its time. So I think, as documentary filmmakers, that's what we always want. Like we are blessed with, I think, a lot of patience that way to wait for that, the idea to really nurture. And I'm like, yeah, sometimes I do lose hope, but then I just pump myself in. That workshop really pumped myself in to see how the young children responded. Yeah, I thought like I joined the session for half an hour and go, but I couldn't leave that session. I attended the full 3-hour session, which went online.
I think with this interaction, with today's interaction with the teachers from various universities and colleges, you have created sensitivity around the matter, and they will definitely talk about it in their institutions, and they will, educate their students about the cause, and more people are likely to join in your initiative. Believe me, I mean, all of us are there to lend in our support, and you have already given the website address for all the participants. Please take note of the website address that Priya has posted in the chat box. Maybe you can reach out to her through this website address. One or two questions, and I'll just move on. This is Dr. Vinay Vikash. Okay, this is Mohini Savedkar, and she writes, it's high time we become more ecocentric than anthropocentric. The recommendation by astrologers to use coral, stone, or pearl to propitiate planet gods, Mars or Moon, not only promotes superstition, but also leads to environmental degradation. She's talking about some stereotypes.
There are a lot like that. While shooting Coral Woman, there is one sequence, those who had seen the film might remember, there were women fishermen who were jumping with Uma, collecting algae called Kappa-picus.
Clothes from the sea. Yeah, that was a shocking scene. I mean, we were not aware of it. I mean, for the religious
purpose. I was not. To be honest, when I was shooting that sequence, the only intention I had was Uma diving with some women in the sea who are like not even with snorkel or oxygen cylinder or anything. They are deep sea divers who can be underwater for a very long time. I thought it will be a beautiful sequence of Uma diving with these women. And while interacting with them, they kept referring about this, it's Pepsi Pashi, that means Pepsi algae. So I was wondering, what is this reference? Then I came to know the algae they were collecting while diving underwater is actually Kappa-picus, which is a algae which came from Philippines. It didn't even belong to Gulf of Mannar or Tamil Nadu. It was bought from Philippines because that was used as a carcinogen agent. To make in Pepsi and other, it's a thickening agent. So it was bought to this coast, thinking it is going to be a sustainable thing for for fishermen because the fishes are less. So this is an alternative income for them. And I came to know about it was actually bought by our ex-president Abdul Kalam. He also was initiating this, but it was only after introduction into the sea, scientists came to know that this is actually smothering the corals. So they just grow and they just suffocate the corals. They grow over the corals and they just suffocate and kill the coral. And now it is illegal to cultivate Kappa-picus. But once you introduce something to the sea, it's very tough to take it out or finish it. So there is now a lot of illegal cultivation happening.
Thank you for creating so much of awareness, Priya. And with this, we have come to the end of the session. And on behalf of the organizing committee, Refresher Course, ARST College and Ramanujan College, and on behalf of all the participants who are present today, around 218 participants have heard you, interacted with you, and they are all sending their best wishes to your impact campaign and to all your future project. And may you get all the success that you have dreamt of in all your future, movies and documentaries. And thank you for sharing your time and, and for generously sharing your expertise and experience in the field.
Thank you.
Have a good day ahead. Yeah.
Thank you.
Have a good day ahead.
Take care.